Have you ever opened your eyes one morning and understood that you were never truly part of the clan, just a resource they kept tapping until it was empty? That's my reality. I wasn't the eldest child, the sibling, or even the person they professed to care for. I was the bank account, the problem solver, the fallback option, and the instant I refused, they wiped me away as if I'd never belonged to them. In those days, my life appeared stable to outsiders. I rose before sunrise, punched in at a position that wore down my physique, and still returned carrying food supplies in one hand and expenses in the other. My folks often called me the foundation of the household, but serving as the foundation required never breaking. It required handing over my vehicle to my sibling after he totaled his, settling obligations my dad acted like weren't real, and agreeing to my mom's assurances that everything would balance eventually. I believed devotion would secure affection, that each concession would gain me a spot in their affections that nobody else could reach. I clung to that notion like a rescue rope, but what I failed to notice was how fast rescue ropes can be severed, particularly when those you're rescuing discover they can get by perfectly well on their own. The initial fracture appeared during a telephone conversation. It was from Ethan. His tone was unsteady, pleading, "Dude, I require your assistance. Only this time, I beg you." I didn't bother inquiring what for. I sped across the city, pulse racing as if I were rushing to pull him from a blazing structure. But upon arrival, it wasn't fire I encountered. It was loan sharks hovering around him like scavengers. He'd borrowed money he couldn't repay, and the individual he listed as the cosigner. Me, without permission, without mentioning it. I gazed at the documents in my grasp, my signature faked in dark pen. My core turned icy. "You exploited me," I murmured. He avoided my gaze. "I had no alternative. You're the sole one who can manage it." That was when it registered. My value to him wasn't as kin. I was merely an exit route, a barrier, an instrument. And while I remained there, the sharks staring at me, expecting responses, one idea crashed into my mind. If this is merely the start, how much further will they slice? That counterfeit signature wasn't the conclusion. It was the ignition. From then onward, I ceased being a sibling and became security. Invoices began arriving under my identity. Charge accounts I never created. Overdue alerts for items I never purchased. Each time I challenged Ethan, he offered the identical justification. "Chill out, guy. You've always managed affairs. You'll sort it." But the harshest disloyalty didn't originate from him. It stemmed from my parents. I assumed they'd support me, defend me. Instead, they advised me to drop it since Ethan was simply attempting to navigate his path. I recall looking at my mom over the supper spread, the burden of each unsettled invoice in my wallet, and comprehending she wasn't requesting forgiveness for him. She was commanding me to absorb the blow. And that evening, as I stayed alert, the reality etched itself into my core. If I didn't establish a boundary shortly, they'd entomb me beneath obligations that weren't mine to begin with. But I had no clue the boundary I set would escalate into a conflict. The shattering moment arrived on a stormy Friday evening. I entered the financial institution, believing I was there to resolve one final chaos. But when the teller accessed my profile, her expression blanched. "Mister, your reserves have been depleted. Every penny, I couldn't inhale." That profile was my tomorrow. Years of labor, every extra hour. Every dinner I forwent to squirrel away a bit extra. Vanished. I stumbled into the downpour, device trembling in my palm as I called Ethan. He answered, chuckling, tunes booming behind him. "You'll recover it, no stress." It was only a short-term deal. I required it more than you did. Short-term. That term reverberated in my head like a blast. My folks must have been aware. Somebody had to grant him entry. In that instant, with the storm drenching my attire and my torso rising, I grasped the reality. I wasn't their foundation. I was their safe. And now the safe was vacant. And if they could pilfer that from me, what else would they seize? The revelation struck me at the kin assembly a week afterward. I arrived, still wounded from the loss of all. And there he stood, Ethan, sporting my timepiece, my outfit, beaming like a ruler. But then I spotted the forms on the surface. A fresh enterprise project. My identity once more imprinted on the papers as the main backer, except I hadn't authorized anything. When I faced him, his smile didn't waver. "Let's go, pal. You always mentioned wanting to create something grand." Well, I created it for us both. The space fell silent. My dad coughed awkwardly. My mom averted her eyes. They all were informed. They'd observed and permitted him to rip my existence apart merely to elevate himself. And in that instant, positioned there in attire I never acquired, in an agreement I never consented to, I grasped the reality I'd been evading. My kin hadn't merely deceived me. They'd supplanted me. I departed that residence feeling like a specter. All I'd labored for, every forfeiture, every silent agreement when I desired to decline, had been distorted into shackles that restrained me while they ascended further. I once believed kin signified allegiance, that lineage ensured fondness. But positioned in that drenched roadway, I understood something much chillier. Kin isn't who bears your surname. It's who safeguards your essence when the globe hones its blades. And mine? They had honed theirs against me. That evening I vowed to myself I'd never permit affection to obscure treachery again.